engagement. He asked the question, what is it that he wants to talk about? If John can't answer that question, if John cannot answer that basic question, then we are in real trouble were he to become President of the United States of America. There's a lot to talk about, starting with Iran's nuclear program, its support for Shiite militia in Iraq, its patronage of Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza. What's John's plan? What's the President's plan for dealing with these obvious, clear, and present dangers? The damaging part of what the President said and what John said in terms of our interest around the world is that it's clear to people, if you do not talk, there's only two other options left: the status quo or war. If you do not attempt to change the status quo by negotiations, there's only one option. Actually, two options left again. I'll repeat it. Status quo, bogged down for decades, losing our blood and treasure, or war. If John is ruled out talking, it means he's going to get more, we're going to get more of what we've gotten from Bush most of this administration, and maybe worse. First, let's end this false argument about preconditions, which has continued to bubble here. Senator Obama was right that the United States should be willing to engage Iran on its nuclear program. I'm going to make it clear, I have not endorsed Senator Obama. I have endorsed neither candidate. I'm not here as a brief for him versus Senator Clinton. But the fact of the matter is, having debated him a dozen times, having traveled and gotten trounced in Iowa, I know what he was saying and has been saying. He said we should engage Iran on its nuclear program without insisting that Iran first freeze its programs. The very subject of our negotiations. We didn't insist that Soviets freeze their nuclear arsenal before we talked to them about arms control. The net effect of demanding preconditions that Iran rejects is that there is no discussion. The result becomes, again, one of two things. They get the bomb, or we have a war. Second, let's stop the Bush-McCain fixation on regime change. Think about it. It is a bizarre policy. We say to our foes, in this case Iran, cease and desist from acquiring the one weapon that could cause us to hesitate attacking you. And when you do, we're going to take you down. Cease and desist, and then we are going to change the regime. I, all along with others, including Dick Lugar and other Republicans, Chuck Hagel, I'm much more interested in conduct change than regime change. We should make it very clear to Iran the risk it faces in terms of isolation if it continues to pursue dangerous nuclear programs, and also what it stands to gain if it gives up its nuclear ambitions. That will require more than us in order to avoid a war. That will require our allies in Europe as well as Russia and China to be on the same page we are, to continually ratchet up the pressure. And for another time, another speech will also require a president, in order to have any other alternative, to begin to condition the American people as to some of the real tools that may have to be engaged short of the military in order to be able to push Iran to the brink of having to realize the choice is the bad one to continue. But it also requires, quite frankly, a more sophisticated understanding than this administration has evidenced, or that John seems to think about. A more sophisticated understanding of the consequences of engaging Iran, including through direct costs. It's a means by which we can exploit the continued rift within the ruling elite in Iran. It's also a way in which the Iranian rulers and its people, who are struggling economically and stifled politically, can understand, the Iranian people can know that it's their government not the United States, that is choosing confrontation over cooperation. And our allies and partners need to know that the United States is willing to go the extra diplomatic mile if we expect to keep them in on the deal, as things get tougher if they do. The Bush-McCain sable rattling is the most self-defeating policy imaginable. It forces Iranians who despise their leadership, and according to the Pew Foundation polls, like us very much, to rally behind their leaders. The one way to unify Iran behind their leaders is threaten to bomb them. As I said in another context, the only way you get the North End and Southie and Boston to get together is threaten to bomb Boston. You're going to unite them all. And my friend John Kerry said, no, attack the Red Sox. That will unite them. But the truth of the matter is, it is totally self-defeating. It spurs instability in the Middle East, which adds to the price of oil, with the very proceeds going to the very people the President and John McCain are most worried about doing bad things. The worst nightmare for a regime that thrives on isolation and tension is an America ready, willing, and able to engage. Since when has talking with another nation removed the word no from our vocabulary? Where is it written that we cannot engage the word no? It's amazing to me how little faith George Bush and John McCain have in themselves and in America, and their unwillingness to even engage. I think it's time for total change in Washington's worldview, and that's going to require more than a great soldier. It'll require a wise leader. And nowhere is this truer than in Iraq. The war stands, in my view, like a big boulder sitting in the middle of the road, denying us the credibility to be able to get other nations to join us, and denying us the flexibility to deal with our crises here at home because it's absorbing so many of our resources. Last week, as was referenced earlier by John McCain made a speech. And I'm going to focus on one portion of the speech, on Iraq. Last week, John revealed that he has no plan, none, to get us out of the mess the President's created in Iraq. The same day, as was pointed out, that the President was addressing the Knesset, John McCain was talking about his vision for the future. John said it's important for presidential candidates, and I quote, to define their objectives and what they plan to achieve, not with vague language, but with clarity. But then he painted a picture where he's hopes to be in Iraq by the end of the first term, without a single sentence that I could discern on the written page explaining how he'd achieve any one of these objectives. That's beyond vague. John is totally silent about how he would realize his rosy vision of 2013. And why? You have to ask yourself, John's a smart guy. Why would he not offer any plan forward? Well, I suspect that it's because if he revealed his plan, which is the Bush plan, he knows it would be summarily rejected by the American people. In his speech, John McCain predicted by 2013 the Iraq war had been won. As my former press secretary, Evan Lieberman, used to say, from your lips to God's ears. Hopefully that's true. But how? How does he do it? He foresaw that Iraq will be, quote, a functioning democracy. How? He doesn't say. By 2013, John said, quote, the civil war has been prevented, militias disbanded, and Iraqi security forces professional and competent. How? He doesn't say. John's crystal ball also reveals, quote, a government of Iraq capable of opposing its authority in every province in Iraq. Right now, it can't even impose its authority in Baghdad, and that one statement makes my point. That he continues to cling to the failed strategy of this administration, which is that it's possible to have a Shia-dominated central government strong enough that it in fact controls the whole country and has the overwhelming support and confidence of the Kurds and the Sunnis.